Welcome back to Reverse Engineering Wattpad. We've got our last set of chapters here for you today. Chapter 23, which is titled The Hospital, 24, which is titled Ties That Bind, 25, which is titled Darkness into Light, and 26, the obligatory self-titled chapter of sorts, number 26, Like Magic.
Yeah. It's been fun. Hard to believe we're already at the end. Wow. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this one. There's a link in the description for all the videos in order if you're joining us now, because, you know, some stuff has gone down and you might be a bit confused if you start watching in the last video.
Although the nature of these stories is basically that you can probably just read an isolated chapter and know exactly what the story up to that point was.
True, so maybe you can just start here and guess. Okay. Chapter 23, The Hospital. Ace's point of view.
Ace's point of view. Where is she? I yelled at the paramedics who were trying to clean the few cuts on my face and arms. Couldn't they see I didn't need help? Why aren't you helping Rosie? I yelled as the stupid paramedics tried to approach me again. I was sitting in the back of an ambulance with my hand handcuffed to the chair I was sitting on, so I didn't try to run back to the scene of the accident again. I shot a glare towards the police officer, who stood just outside the ambulance watching me. Behind him, the twisted metal wreck of my car was still smoking, and so was the other car we had collided with. Couldn't they see I wasn't the one they should be watching? With all these people paying attention to me, there might not be anyone to tend to Rosie. I felt my body go rigid at the thought of Rosie. Where is she? Why won't anybody tell me where she is? I wondered.
Sir, we're going to bring you to the hospital to run more tests, one of the paramedics said.
I'm not going until I know where Rosie is.
You've already sent her and the other driver to the same hospital, sir.
Was that so hard? I crossed my arms as best I could and glared at all of the paramedics around me. I was angry I wasn't going to be in the same ambulance as Rosie, and the thought that she was already on her way to the hospital made me realize she probably didn't have just a couple of scrapes and bruises like me. The cop and a paramedic got in the back of the ambulance with me, and then we were off. In the hospital, I was seated on a bed as a younger doctor ran some tests to make sure I didn't have a concussion. Do you know where Rosie is? I demanded.
Sorry, I don't know, he said. Now, is your vision spotty? It's crucial we make sure you don't have a concussion.
I was about to give him a concussion for keeping such important information from me. I could feel the familiar buildup of anger in my chest and tried to push it down. This is why Rosie was mad at you, I thought bitterly. You're the reason she's in the hospital. Once the doctor cleared me, I was allowed to go sit in the waiting room. There was a security guard standing in the corner, and I wondered if he was there because of me. How will she ever forgive me? Do I even deserve forgiveness? As feelings of guilt seized me, a very frantic dweeb entered the waiting room. Dweeb's eyes fell on me and narrowed. You! He shouted, pointing his finger at me. What the heck did you do? The dweeb came closer to me. I had never seen him so angry. Rosalind Jasmine Sapphire is in a coma because of you. This is your fault, he yelled. You hurt her with your horseplay. But I couldn't hear anything he said after coma. Rosie was in a coma. I caused her to slip into a coma. I was going to lose her, just like I lost my mom. I felt my eyes watering, but pushed the fear and sadness down like I had been doing all my life. I wasn't about to cry in front of the dweeb. And then he was hitting me. And as if he hadn't learned his lesson the last time, the dweeb was hitting me. I was about to start fighting back and use my fists to bring him one step closer to the concussion I wanted to give the doctor earlier. But then I remembered my promise to Rosie. I couldn't break it again. I felt someone pulling us apart, and for a second, I thought it was her. I thought it was Rosie. But it wasn't. It was the security guard who had been stationed in the waiting room to watch me. Knock it off, he said, or you'll both be out of here! Dweeb glared at me. I hope you're happy, he said. She loves you, and you did this! He turned around and sat on the other side of the waiting room. I fell back into my chair, the weight of his words really hitting me. How could I let this happen to Rosie? I loved her. I loved her and I let her get hurt. I stood up and made my way to the front desk. Hello, I said to the lady sitting behind the desk. I need help finding my girlfriend.
Do you know what floor she's on?
She's in a coma. The word was vile on my tongue. I hated the emotions that hit me as I said it. Get it together, Ace. She's going to be fine.
That's tough.
She came in about an hour ago, I said, hoping that would help. An hour away from Rosie. An hour where she slipped into a coma and I had way too many people tending to the few cuts on my face and arms. An hour where dweebs somehow got word of what had happened. Did her Grandma Rose know? I'd have to ask if they called her.
Sorry, sir. I can't let you see her. It's family only.
I'm her boyfriend, I snapped. I'm just as important.
I'm sorry, but for now it's family only.
I saw the receptionist eyeing the security guard and decided I wasn't going to find Rosie the easy way. It was time to go for a walk. With a scoff, I started pacing down the hallway to the stairwell. If the receptionist wasn't going to tell me where Rosie was, then I was going to find her. I was going to find her if I had to go through every room in the hospital to do it. I pushed the door open and walked to the next floor up. When I got there, I looked around, agitated, trying to spot the nearest doctor. The minute I saw one, I ran over to him and grabbed him by the scruff of his white lab coat.
Hey, he
Shut up,
exclaimed.
I said. My girlfriend is in a coma. Where is she?
Sir, I don't know.
I punched him out, not caring to hear the rest of what he had to say. I didn't have any more time to worry about my promise to Rosie. I only cared about one thing, only had time for one thing, could only focus on one thing. Finding her. I'd go back and punch the dweeb when I got a chance. I prowled the hallway until I found another doctor. Where is Rosie? I snapped at him, barely breaking my stride.
He asked.
He crumpled to the floor after my fist hit his nose. I hadn't even stopped walking. I made my way to the end of the hallway, kicked the door open, and went up to the next floor. I kicked this door open, too, and it stuck against the doorstop. There was a doctor wheeling a sleeping elderly patient down the hallway in my direction. I ran up to him. You! I yelled.
Yes, he said.
I grabbed his wrists and yanked his grip off the wheelchair. I grabbed his wrists and yanked his grip off the wheelchair, then pushed the wheelchair down the hall with my foot so I could get right in his face.
Hey, the doctor said.
I punched him to shut him up. Where is Rosie? I yelled in his face, but he was already out cold. From behind I heard the wheelchair start to go down the stairwell through the door that was still open.
A frail old voice echoed back up. I heard a crash. I didn't care.
I dropped the doctor and ran until I found another one, and another one, and another. I ran all up and down the hallway on every floor, doing everything I could to find Rosie. No one seemed to know where she was. How could they all be so useless? I lost count of how many punches I threw. Finally, I found myself with what must have been one of the few conscious doctors left in the whole hospital, holding her up by the scruff of her coat. Where is Rosie? I demanded.
Sir, this is the maternity ward, she said, sounding scared.
What? I asked.
She shakily raised a hand and pointed directly to the side. I followed with my gaze. We were right in front of the windows where all the babies are laid out in bassinets for people to view, and my yelling seemed to open them. Suddenly, the energy left me. I sighed and let go of the doctor. She ran away. It wasn't working. Nobody seemed to know where Rosie was. I ran a tired hand over my face, and a chorus of crying babies started.
Heavy stuff.
Pretty heavy. If you think that's heavy. Chapter 24, Ties That Bind, Ace's point of view.
The doctors and nurses at the hospital were making me so angry I could barely even think straight. I stalked up and down the hallways, pausing every now and then to punch the wall in frustration. It didn't hurt, because there was no possible physical pain that could come anywhere close to the mental and emotional anguish I was going through. I saw a pregnant woman being wheeled into a room, breathing raggedly, in what she mistakenly thought was true pain. I knew without any reservation that I was in more pain than anyone else in the entire world, and anyone stupid enough to disagree with me would feel how kindly the ridges of my knuckles took to their insolence. Finally, I put my back against the wall and sank down into a crouched position. I couldn't believe this was happening. Rosie, the person I loved more than anything else in the world, was in a coma, and there was nothing I could do to help. I had told her I loved her before, But it was finally hitting me that I had never really shown her how much I loved her, and I suddenly knew that nothing in the world was more important than that. I had to show her how much she meant to me, and I had to do it while there was still time, even if she was unconscious for it. A grim determination set in around my eyes. I knew what I had to do. I got to my feet and left the hospital. What I needed to do required going somewhere that I had sworn I wouldn't ever go again, at least not before the school year was over. I had to go home. I got in my car and started driving there because his car is fixed. It was about an hour drive. When I got there, I parked on the street in front of the house and stared out the window at it. It was just how I remembered. And why shouldn't it be, I thought? Nothing about it has changed. What's changed is me. I got out of my car and walked up to the front door, thinking about that as I went. I really had changed since I left here. I finally knew what it was like to be in love with someone. It was the most terrifying thing in the world, giving your heart to someone. I had told myself before that I would never do it, that I would never fall in love. But then I met Rosie. That love that I felt for her was the only thing that could have possibly made me do what I did at that moment when I got to the door. I knocked. After a moment, the door opened, and there he was, my father. He looked completely surprised to see me.
Ace, he said.
Hey, Dad, I said.
What are you doing here? Why aren't you at school?
I need to get something.
What?
It's in my room. Look, I'll be quick. I don't want to bother you. He looked at me for a while, his eyes narrowing, but thankfully he stepped aside without another word. I hurried up to my room. I knew exactly where what I needed was, in a box in my closet. I dragged it out into my room, then sat down in front of it, staring quietly. I hadn't looked at it in years. I heard my dad come to the door behind me, and then I heard him gasp out loud.
Is that? He asked.
Yeah, I replied.
I had no idea you kept it all this time.
Well, there's no need to make a big deal out of it. I have what I need, so I'll go now. I stood, picked up the box, and moved to the door, but this time my dad didn't step out of the way.
Hold on, Ace, he said. Let's talk.
We don't have anything to talk about, I said.
He looked at me intently. This is about a girl, isn't it? He finally asked.
I looked away. What makes you think that? I said.
I recognize that look in your eyes, he said. It's the same look I got in my eyes whenever your mother would walk into the room. You're in love.
I kept my eyes averted.
He nodded at the box in my hand. Is she worth it? He asked.
I looked back at him right in his eyes. More than anything, I said.
He nodded. Then I won't keep you from getting back to her, but I have something for you. Come this way.
I followed him to the door leading to the basement. Wait here.
Wait here just a second, he said before disappearing down the stairs. When he came back up, he had a box of his own. He set it down on the table. I've been waiting for the right time to give you this, he said. I know things haven't been so great between us since your mother died of 37 different kinds of cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, 35 other kinds too. But I want you to know that I've never stopped loving you, and that you will always be my son. I looked at the box, not knowing what was inside. I set the box I had come for down and pulled the one from the basement closer to me. I hesitated for a moment, but then I opened it. And it was my turn to gasp out loud.
Are these...
Yes, he said. I looked up at him. He had the warmest smile I'd ever seen on his face, one for every birthday since her 10th.
The box was full of shot glasses. I picked one up and turned it over in my hands, looking at it closely.
That was for your 11th, he said. I got it from New York when I went there for a weekend with Amanda.
Who's Amanda? I asked.
Some woman I was fucking, he said with a shrug.
I nodded solemnly. All this time, I thought he had stopped caring about my birthdays, but here was the proof he hadn't. He had taken time out of his weekend of cheating on Mom to get me a gift. I picked up a different shot glass. And this one? I asked.
Your 14th, he said. That was a different trip to New York with a different Amanda.
I don't know what to say, Dad, I said, putting the glass back down. I didn't know that you still cared.
I will always care, son, he said.
I smirked. Thanks, I said. I looked at the two boxes on the table, but I really don't have room in my car for this right now.
That's okay, he said. You can leave them here, and here is where they'll be when you come home after the school year ends. You are still coming back, right?
I looked at him for a moment. Yeah, I finally said, I'll definitely be back. My father and I had had a very strained relationship since Mom died, but now, for the first time, it felt like we just might be on the road to reconciliation. It was a touching moment, so we did what men do. We shook hands.
Now go get that girl, he said with a grin.
Author's note. Oh, that is so sweet. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face. I have seriously loved writing from Ace's point of view these last 2 chapters because I feel like I've gotten to know him so much better. I think I most like seeing him explain how much he loves Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire because I totally want a guy to love me that much one day. I hope you have all enjoyed it as much as I have and that you are all really excited for the exciting conclusion because we are just about there.
I love when you read this. Chapter 25, Darkness into Light. Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire's point of view. Darkness. I was entirely surrounded by darkness, floating in it. I didn't know how long I was there. I tried to move, but it almost seemed pointless. Even if I was moving, how would I know? I couldn't tell where I was going. I stuck my tongue out at the darkness. Or did I? I wasn't sure of anything, except the darkness. It was so dark. Am I dead? I wondered. Wasn't darkness supposed to be all that you could ever see after you died? I wasn't sure. I had never been dead before, and Pride and Prejudice never went over that. Suddenly, I saw a faint glow in the distance. It was coming towards me, getting closer. I couldn't make out what it was, but slowly, surely, it came into view. A giraffe, galloping towards me. Suddenly, I didn't feel so afraid.
Ace's point of view. I walked into the hospital, the box under my arm. I went up to a doctor who had a bandage on his nose. Excuse me, do you know which room Rosie is in? I asked him.
Yes, he said hastily. Yes, just upstairs, first door on your left. You can't miss it. Please don't hit me.
How would I hit you? I asked. He didn't answer. He turned and ran away. Sometimes doctors are silly. I went upstairs and into Rosie's room. Her grandma Rose, Raven, and the dweeb were all sitting around her bed in chairs. They stood when I entered. Ace, Raven said. I heard about what happened with Spike. I'm so sorry. She came over to me and gave me a hug. To my surprise, I felt myself hugging her back. Besides Rosie, I hadn't hugged anyone since my mom died of 37 different kinds of cancer. Breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, 35 other kinds too. Felt almost nice, if you could call anything about this situation nice, which I wouldn't. How is Rosie? I asked. I looked over at her. She looked so frail on the hospital bed, her eyes closed, a heart rate monitor beeping periodically, her beautiful, mismatched eyes. Her name is Rosalind Jasmine Sapphire, the dweeb exclaimed, stepping over to me. What are you doing here? Haven't you done enough already?
Rosalind Jasmine Sapphire's point of view. Darkness. But it was growing lighter. The giraffe was still galloping towards me. When it got to me, it came to a stop, leaned down, and licked my face. I knew right then and there I was safe. Hello, I said, petting its head. What's your name? Right before my eyes, the giraffe started changing, shrinking, taking a different shape. The shape of a person, a woman. As she changed, she started to become familiar. I felt tears come to my eyes when I began to recognize her. When she was done changing, she smiled at me and opened her mouth to speak. My name is your mother.
Ace's point of view. You don't belong here, the dweeb shouted in my face. Arnie, Raven said. No, this is all his fault, the dweeb said, pointing a finger right into my chest. Don't fight, Grandma Rose said. Not now. That's what caused this. She looked sadly at Rosie. Was she right? Had I been wrong my whole life? Was fighting really bad? He's right, I said quietly. It is my fault. That's why I'm here. I need to fix this. What do you mean? Raven asked, not knowing what I meant. I need the room, I said, just for a few minutes. You think we're going to leave her alone with you? The dweeb asked. I looked at Grandma Rose. Please, I said. She held my gaze for a long time. Okay, she finally said. Let's give them a minute together. What? The dweeb protested. Come on, Arnie, Raven said. Would you please go get some drinks for us? Well, okay, he said. His voice sounded disappointed. I heard him walk away. Then I heard Raven and Grandma Rose leave. My eyes were on Rosie the whole time. I set the box down on a table and opened. Didn't open the box, just opened. I looked into it, then back at Rosie. Here goes nothing, I said.
Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire's point of view. Darkness, except not complete anymore. Mom, I said, tears streaming down my face. I'm here, Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire, she said. I sobbed and threw my arms around her. I miss you so much, I cried. She hugged back. She felt warm. I missed you too, she said. The hug ended. I wiped my tears away, looking around. Why is it so dark here? I asked. You're between worlds, Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire, she said. What do you mean? I asked, not knowing what she meant. You were in an accident. You're in a coma. You're dying, she said solemnly, and you have a choice. You can come with me right now, but if you do, it will mean saying goodbye to everything in your life. Or you can go back.
Ace's point of view. The box was empty, and I was wearing its contents, my old magician's outfit. I had the hat on, the jacket with the tails, the bow tie, the vest, the white gloves, a wand in my hand. I never thought that I would fall in love, I said to Rosie. I thought that my heart would be a stone forever, a black stone with a hole in it, and all of the other stones have left it alone, and the hole just keeps growing and growing until it's not a stone anymore. It's just one big hole, a hole that has no base to exist within, but it exists anyways, and all of the other holes have left it alone. And then someone comes along and starts kicking it in the head with a steel-toed boot, and it can't do anything to stop that because it's just a hole. I felt myself tear up a little bit. But then I met you. You showed me how to be a real person again. You came and filled that hole up with the cement of your eternal love, and now I have a heart again, and it's stronger because it's cement and not a stone. Author's note. OMG, this is so sweet. I'm literally crying writing this. A tear rolled down my cheek. If I lose you, I don't know what will happen to that cement. It will shatter and break. I can't lose you. I love you, and I want you to come back to me. Please come back to me. I took my hat off, held it upside down in front of me, and held the wand up to its brim. This is for you, Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire.
Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire's point of view. Darkness. I thought I heard someone say my name, but I wasn't focusing on it. I was focusing on my mom. Mom, I miss you. I want to stay with you, I cried. Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire, she said, brushing my cheek with her hand. You can't. It's not your time yet. But I thought you said I had a choice, I sniffled. That's the wrong choice, dear, she said motherly. I don't want to lose you again, I said. You've never lost me, she said. I'm always right here. She pointed to the center of my chest. I looked down. I was wearing my giraffe shirt. I knew what she meant. As long as I kept my giraffe shirt, she would always be close. Mom, I said, more tears falling. Go back to him, she said. Who? I asked. The boy you love, she said. Ace. Ace? I said. But I want to be with you. One day you will be, she said. But that's not for 40 more years. How do you know? I asked. It runs in the family, she said. Oh, I said. Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire, you have to live your life. You love Ace, and he loves you. He's with you right now, trying to bring you back. I looked down. I knew that was the right thing was to stay alive, but it was so hard to leave my mom. I looked up at her, tears still in my eyes. I love you, Mom, I said. I love you too, she said. She started to get blurry. I wiped my tears away, but she kept getting blurrier. Please, don't go, I said, holding my hand out to her. I'm not going, she said, fading away. Keep your giraffe shirt. She faded away, and I was left in complete darkness again.
Ace's point of view. I hadn't done it in so many years, but I knew somehow that it had to work. I tapped the brim of the hat with my wand and started reciting the words I hadn't spoken in so long. Hocus pocus, presto, alakazam, this spell is totally lit, fam. Father Zeus, help me now, I perform this trick if you'll allow. Lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, I can hear my audience starting to sigh. May the force be with me, something something rhymes with me. With the power of these words exact, I command you to come out of this hat. I tapped the brim of the hat again, then put the wand down. I reached into the hat and pulled out Rosie's pipe cleaner giraffe. I looked it over. I still thought it looked more juvenile than dorky, but I knew that she loved it, and I wanted her to know that I loved her. I put it down on her chest and then sat down in one of the chairs by her bed. I closed my eyes as more tears started to fall. And then...
Ace? Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire's point of view. Darkness. Then less, because I opened my eyes. I looked over to the side and saw Ace sitting in a chair, crying softly. Ace? I said. His eyes snapped open. He leapt to his feet and came to my side.
Rosie! He yelled.
I felt his tears as they rolled off his cheeks and hit mine.
You came back, he sobbed.
I'll always come back to you, I said. I looked down at my chest and saw my pipe cleaner giraffe. You brought Mr. Fuzzles, I said happily.
Author's note. That's the giraffe's name, in case you can't tell. I just wanted to be clear about that. I love you, Rosie, he said.
I heard the words I had wanted him to say for so long, and I knew that he meant them. All the signs had been there all along. The way he got into fights around me, the way he sent people a video of me failing to chug a beer, the way he trashed my poster, it all added up. He really did love me. I looked up at him. I love you too, Ace, I said. The door to the room burst open, and Raven, Arnie, and Grandma Rose all rushed in.
We heard, Raven started. Her eyebrows shot up. Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire, Grandma Rose shouted. They all gathered around my bed with Ace. You're okay.
They all took turns hugging me, which can be hard to do when you're in a hospital bed. I have never felt so much love in all my life. I looked up at them, my eyes brimming with tears. I am so happy right now, I said. They all smiled back at me. It was a moment I knew I would never forget for the rest of my 40 years.
Ace, what are you wearing? Raven asked.
Chapter 26, Like Magic. Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire's point of view. After I got out of the hospital, life quickly returned to normal. I went back to classes as soon as I could, and the school year was over before I knew it. Ace and I went out on a date every weekend, each one more amazing than the last. Arnie and I studied together every week and passed our final exams. Sometimes I wondered if he might still be in love with me, but every time I asked him, he said he wasn't and quickly looked away, so I guess he got over it. Grandma Rose called me every week and we would talk for hours about what was going on at school. Oh yeah, and Raven dumped Spike. After the last day of classes, Ace told me that he was taking me on a surprise date. Raven helped me pick the outfit, a navy blue shirt with a giraffe dressed like a police officer with a speech bubble that said, "I've spotted you," crease-shredded jeans, and black Converse. Raven had to leave to go home right after that, so we hugged goodbye. I'm gonna miss you, Raven, I said, tears streaming down my face.
I'm gonna miss you too, Rosalind, Jasmine, Sapphire, she said, but we'll see each other next year.
I nodded, and she left. Ace picked me up a few minutes later and started driving me to wherever we were going. I kept asking him, but he wouldn't tell me. After a long drive, we finally got there. He had taken me to the beach, one of my favorite places to go because it reminds me of the music video for What Makes You Beautiful by One Direction. When we got out of the car, Ace took something covered in a blanket out of his truck. What's that? I asked.
It's a surprise, remember? He smirked.
I nearly swooned. Oh, God. I started humming What Makes You Beautiful as we walked along the beach. Eventually, we got to a pier stretched out over the water and started walking up it. That made me think of You and I by One Direction. So I started humming that too. It was hard to hum 2 songs at once, but then Ace started humming with me with I hummed with passion.
Ace hummed really casually.
We started to pretend to walk in to places where other people were standing, like in the You and I video. Some people gave us weird looks, and we laughed really hard. We got to the end of the pier and looked out at the sun as it began to set. It was so romantic. Ace put the object he had brought from the car on the edge of the railing.
Ready? He asked, still smirking.
Ready, I smiled, my heart completely full of love for him. He whipped off the blanket. It was a picnic basket.
I thought we could have a picnic while the sun goes down, he shrugged. We can even sit on the blanket.
Ace Pike, I gushed, giving him a hug. What did you bring?
Open it and see, he said.
I quickly opened the picnic basket and felt my jaw drop. It was full of bags of plain potato chips, my favorite. Ace, I said. I could feel tears coming to my eyes.
I went to every store in the tri-state area and got as many kinds as I could find, he said. I looked closer. He was right. They were all there. Pringles, Lay's, Ruffles, Old Dutch, Miss Vicky's, Utz, Colonel Crispy's Shock and Awe chips, Silicon Valley computer chips, Old Granddad's chips off the old block, Chip and Dale's Fun Time for Kids chips, Chip and Dale's Fun Time for Adults chips, Nathaniel Wagner's Pro Golf Chip-It-Ins, Herr Guntermann's Blitzkrieg chips, Oral Surgeon chipped teeth, wood chips, paint chips, spleen chips, Chip Kennedy's thinly sliced fried potatoes, all my favorites, all there in the picnic basket. See, Rosie, Ace said, even plain things can have a large variety. You may think you're plain, but that doesn't mean you can't be unique.
I started sobbing. Ace, I love you so much, I said. This is one of the most romantic things anyone's ever done for me.
Rosie, he said, it was really you who was magic all along. He pulled me close and started kissing my eyeball. I trembled under his touch as his tongue rolled around on my pupil, gasping at how sensual it was. The people around us on the pier saw us kissing, and they all started clapping. Author's note, OMG, I love this so much, I'm clapping too.
As we stood there, the sun setting behind us, the people around us applauding, and Ace's lips around my eye, I realized that the love I had found was the greatest, most incredible love that anyone could find. It defied all explanations. It would overcome any obstacles. It would last for all of our years and into eternity, like magic.
Author's note, heart, 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 heart. OMG, Like Magic is finished. Thanks so much to you all for reading. It means so much to me. I have had such an unbelievably amazing time writing this story, and all your comments have been so special. I'm actually crying a bit now it's over, but don't you worry because I will start on book 2 soon, I promise. And also, like, special thanks to my true girls, Brittany and Tiffany. I love you both so much. You are the best. And also special thanks to my new girl, Rosalind, Jasmine Sapphire. I have loved getting to know you, and you mean so much to me. I literally cannot wait to see you again in book 2. Much heart to everyone until next time when I upload the first chapter of book 2, Next Magic. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face, smiley face, smiley face.
And that's the story.
That's the story.
Like Magic is over.
I don't have to read those author notes anymore.
That's the most disappointing part of this whole thing.
I don't know about that.
You're so good at it though. That's why I made Will read them all.
Really? It wasn't because you couldn't get through them without laughing?
Because I couldn't say any of those words. You're really good at it. When you took the chips in the last chapter, it was like, oh, thank God, I don't have to try and say something. Like, I don't have to read that. You're just good at reading things like that.
Well, thank you.
like the restaurant name.
Well, I hope everyone who watched enjoyed.
Yeah, it was very fun to write this with Will. Good co-writer there.
What's that?
You're a good co-writer.
Oh, well, so are you.
Aw.